Every year in May, the European Union marks its birthday. And to look at this important day and Europe's relations with Taiwan, this week on Taiwan Talk, we sit down with Lutz Guellner, head of the European Economic and Trade Office in Taiwan. If you were to condense that down into maybe a few words, what do you think those few words or what that sentence might be to describe what Europe Day means today?
Stronger together. Okay. I think this is the really important message in this.
This past Saturday, May 9th, marked Europe Day, which commemorates the day 76 years ago, on May 9th, 1950, when the French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman delivered a historic speech outlining what is known as the Schuman Declaration, which paved the way for a new era of peace, integration, cooperation across the European continent, and laying the foundations for what we know as today as the European Union. So as the EU's top representative here in Taiwan, what does this day mean for you, and also what does it mean for people in Europe? And for Europeans around the world, I should say.
Well, Europe Day, I think for many Europeans is quite an emotional day. Okay. Because it is really a moment where after all the wars and disasters of hundreds and hundreds of years, the Europeans have decided to do something very different. And that is to work together, to unite, with a very simple idea behind this, and that is stronger together. I think this is really the most important idea behind there. And that is not only true for the 1950s and 60s, that is even more true today. If you look at what is happening in geopolitics, the role of Europe, or the size of our member states, now we have 27 member states that did something quite unique, and that is to give up some of their sovereignty, some of even their ability to decide on certain issues, because they said, we transfer this to Europe, to the European institutions, of course with complicated mechanisms and checks and balances, etc. But they have basically relinquished some of these rights and sovereignty. So this idea is as simple as powerful. And I have to say, of course, there are hiccups and there are problems, and you read a lot about this. But I think the truth about Europe and the European integration is that it's working much better than people think. And the moment you, even as a European, you just sit still and think about, you don't need a passport anymore if you travel. You have the same money. You can study wherever you want. You can open a business wherever you want. And even if I translate this on my own situation and family, let's say, I'm German, my wife is Dutch, my kids were born in Belgium, and we have been traveling around in Europe so much. So this is working really well. But I said, of course, if you give up sovereignty, and there's always kind of the moment that people think this goes too far or this is too much given away. And this is also what people discuss nowadays. Has never been an easy process, but I think the idea is still very, very valid. And that's why the 9th of May, I think, is a good day. It's a good day to pause and to also think of what we got from all this. Very tangible, small things, big things, and I think this is important to recall.
And I would never accuse you of being as old as I am. But growing up, I remember, before we talked about the common market, and also there was like the different coal agreements and things like that. And so when I was growing up, I would never imagine that there would be a united Europe the way it is today. And so what does that mean to you? I'm sure you've experienced some of that too. Maybe not as much, but you've experienced some of that too.
No, I mean, I'm maybe the first generation. I'm born in the 70s. So in the 80s, we could start kind of traveling around. And in the 90s, when I studied, it was normal to study in a different country. What I also did, I studied in Germany and France, and it became more and more normal. And now it is nearly the other way around. If you don't do this in Europe, it's not normal. So this is really something which is growing. And a lot of these achievements, be they small or be they big, are actually taken for granted nowadays. I give you a small kind of achievement, which is quite important and which is quite relevant for especially the younger listeners to this program. For example, mobile phone charging cables. We had 4 or 5 different systems for a long time. So after a long discussion, we have now unified them. There's only one, and you don't need to think kind of what you need to take where. The other small kind of element would be roaming fees, for example. You do not pay roaming fees in the European Union anymore. Wherever you go, you just keep your phone on. You don't need to think, oh my God, do I need to have another eSIM, etc. And let's not forget also the big things like we had financial crisis. We had so many things to go through, and we have weathered most of these elements. But it's true, nobody falls in love with a single market. Nobody falls in love with a coal and steel union and things like that. So the big challenge is always to fill this European idea with life, with real stories, with real people, with real, with emotions, I think. And I think this is happening, and that's a good thing.
So today, with your current position, you're head of the European Economic and Trade Office here in Taipei. So what is your mission, both you and also your office? And what is your role in fostering the economic trade relations and just relations in general between the EU and Taiwan?
Yeah, so the office is called European Economic and Trade Office, as you said, and it's of course total confusion. Why this name? Is this the Chamber of Commerce? And it's not. There's also the European Chamber of Commerce. And in principle, what the EETO, as the office is called, what it's doing is nothing else but an informal EU embassy. So we work on economics, we work on kind of the whole kind of set of issues that any representation would do. But maybe we as European Union are a little bit different from a classic representation of Germany or France, for example. And it can be basically, it's 2 things. The one is we represent the European Union on everything. Sorry, now it's a bit technical, on everything where the European Union has competence. So for example, on trade policy, it is done in Brussels by the European Union. It's not anymore done in the member states. So that's why the EETO here in Taiwan is in the lead for this. And the second part of our work is really bringing the member states together. We have 16 EU member states, big and small. So from Germany and France to Denmark, Austria, and Lithuania, and Luxembourg, I think, is our smallest member here. And of course, we bring the member states together, we coordinate, we give them a platform as European Union. And that is a very, very important thing, especially for the smaller member states. For me, I think the work that we are doing is really focusing on 3 key issues. The first one is we want to intensify our economic relations. So trade, investment, economics, but also new issues, economic security, supply chain, resilience also has become such an important issue. And all this is not anymore the old trade promotion, just getting a company investing somewhere. It has become a little bit more complicated. And of course, in geopolitical times, even further. The second leg for me is really to build the links also between the people, so people-to-people contacts, the value-based kind of cooperation. I think we'll come back to that a little bit later, kind of that there is a lot that binds us between Europe and Taiwan, and we want to build this. And the third one is what I would call the resilience agenda. We have a very precarious situation in Europe, of course, with a war raging on the European continent after Russia's invasion in Ukraine, an ongoing hot war. You have in Taiwan this tremendous pressure from the other side of the straits. And I think also here, there's a lot of things where we can work together, where we can learn from each other. And this is really, it's a very dense and very full agenda, but I think a good one.
And so that's interesting because the individual states, the individual member states, they have the relations with Taiwan. And then also you're kind of representing Brussels in the shorthand. You're also then representing the European Union. How does that kind of mesh together then?
Very well, actually, in practice, because our interests are, of course, the same ones. What I'm representing is, to a large degree, also what the member states are having in mind. What the difference is that my French colleague would maybe push much more for French companies and would promote French culture, and I would go a little bit broader and maybe bring a couple of these member states together and. In addition, of course, to those issues that clearly are Brussels focused, like, as I said before, this trade policy, if we have a WTO kind of discussion or something, this is done by us. But in principle, we really work hand in hand. And in my view, now having been here for 2 years, it works really well.
So it sounds like actually being head of the EETO, you have a very challenging, but it sounds like a very interesting job too. I mean, because there's so many interesting things you can pull together.
Absolutely. It's kind of, you can do a lot of things. I think the key thing is to set a little bit your priorities also. Not only my priorities is, of course, what is in the interest of the European Union. And also here, the idea is to work together, to always look at the added value, that my office is also giving to the EU member states. I'm not here to replace any of the member states. I'm not here to take their jobs away. I'm here to support them, to reinforce them, and to work together. And this is kind of, for us 16, it's working well.
Moving outside the official type of ties, your office doesn't deal with that as much then, like the cultural ties and stuff, but then you did mention people to people, so you're kind of doing a little bit of that too?
Yeah, we do that too, but of course it's a little bit more complicated to promote Europe as a continent with 450 million people and 27 member states, and we always need to be careful that we don't represent one part of Europe more than the other. This is part of the game, of the brief, I would say. But culture and people-to-people contacts are hugely important. Let's stay on culture. Culture is a way to connect, is a way to build bridges, is a way to open the hearts and the minds as well. Very often going beyond kind of declarations and texts and signing MOUs and what usually is done in diplomacy. And I'm a great believer that promoting culture, not only for the sake of promoting culture, which is already a good cause, but also using it as a vehicle, as a ventil, to create other opportunities, to get a better understanding of each other, and maybe to open kind of doors that are not opened. I personally invested quite a lot in promoting, for example, culture with classical music, because I think it's a fantastic area where Taiwan and here in Taipei, and not only in Taipei, all over the island, you have fantastic orchestras. There is a knowledge and interest in all forms of classical music, and of course also other music, but maybe that's the one I'm focusing on. And these links that we are creating goes beyond just the music. It creates also opportunities for companies to speak to each other, for whatever, if we have, for example, here members of parliaments, either from the European Parliament or from national parliaments. These are ways of connecting beyond the classic, let's say, diplomatic protocol. And that's why I'm a great believer. And people-to-people contacts, I don't think I need to explain. Of course, we want to show to the Taiwanese, what Europe is all about. There are a lot of possibilities, opportunities for students to go to Europe, to study, to travel, to experience, and vice versa. My role is also not to promote, but at least to explain Taiwan also more to European audiences, and in particular also to my colleagues, not only on politics and economics, but also beyond. And this is why kind of this cultural element is so important. And on Europe Day, we always have a cultural element. For me, that's quite important. We have a great partnership with the National Symphony Orchestra here, also working with others, of course. But this is a very, very valuable partnership that I find is opening exactly these doors.
And also, I would venture to say that looking at relations between Taiwan and Europe over the past few years, things have changed a lot. I mean, COVID-19 really disrupted global supply chains, which maybe helped both sides look at the relations a little bit differently. We've also had the growing importance of the semiconductor industry here in Taiwan, and that plays a very important role in the global economy. And also there are different geopolitical concerns. So how do you see the relations between Europe and Taiwan the past few years, and how do you look at them moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's an understatement to say that a lot has happened. Also in the good way. If
I'm trying to be nice to you, okay?
Absolutely. No, but also in a way that our bilateral ties, our linkages, etc., become more and more intense. I think what is happening now in many areas would have been unthinkable a couple of years ago. And all this was, as you rightly say, kicked off by the COVID-19 experience. First of all, also a great admiration for the way how Taiwan has handled this situation, this crisis. I think this was really, the Europeans have seen this very, very clearly, but also the negative effects of the interrupted supply chains, etc. And over the past few years, also then additionally now with an additional momentum, let's call it like this, because of this geopolitical situation, as you called it. I spoke about the war in Europe, the increasing importance also for certain technological developments, of course, semiconductors, but also artificial intelligence, has created a dynamics in our bilateral relations that would have not been possible kind of a couple of years ago. And of course, let's not beat around the bush. We don't have formal diplomatic ties for historic and other reasons. But still, we are very, very committed, to this relationship. We want to build it. We want to intensify it. We see Taiwan as a like-minded partner, like-minded in terms of values, in terms of our values, how a society should be governed from democracy to rule of law. I think there are so many overlaps, and there's also great admiration in Europe for the path of Taiwan. This democratization experience over the past 30 years is such a success story, and combined with this economic success, is great, is a great inspiration also for many. And our job now, already for 2, 3, 4 years, is let's build on this. Let's build on this in the interest and mutual interest. I think Taiwan wants to diversify also. Of course, you have very, very important, not only important security partners and historically, etc. Nobody puts any of this in question. But I think there's an interest to branch out a little bit and to have other partners also in the world, economically, for example, but maybe also beyond. And for us, the same thing. I'm convinced that we need Taiwan as a partner for our own economic and technological development. Semiconductors is maybe a bit the flash word, but you cannot reduce this relationship to it. I think it goes beyond it. It goes into really technology, artificial intelligence, and something where we have a lot then to discuss and in the good sense and to learn from each other is our respective approaches to this. We just had a very, very interesting debate also between officials on digital kind of issues. How do we deal with regulation, with artificial intelligence? Do we need rules of the game? How can we promote certain sectors, etc.? And it was quite amazing to see how much overlap there is, despite kind of the huge geographic distance and the close linkages we have with other partners. So, and I also have to stress this goes beyond just the economic field. We Europeans do not see Taiwan as a faraway island that has no importance to us. I think not only Taiwan as an economic partner, but also the region and also Taiwan Straits and having stability in the Taiwan Straits, preserving the status quo is of direct interest to the Europeans. I think we make this also clear, at least in statements. I think more and more also in deeds. And that adds kind of a quite, I would call it, political kind of element also in our work here. even if I have to stress, the title of my office, the European Economic and Trade Office, gives a bit the grounding. By the way, I forgot to mention a very, very important kind of fact. The European investors are by far the largest here in Taiwan. European companies have invested more here in Taiwan than US and Japanese companies together. It's a bit a trivial pursuit fact, that is nice to know, but it's actually also a very, very good grounding for our relationship, which then would branch out, far beyond the economic field.
Right, you're right. It's one of those kind of open secrets. That information, that those numbers are out there, but people don't think about it. And I would just, as a side note, just say that over the years, I have noticed how the attitudes, working with European people and businesses and associations here in Taiwan, and also the Taiwanese, that there's more interest going both ways over the past few years. I was speaking to a trade rep here from one of your member states, and she was mentioning the fact that there's extremely large growing interest in local governments from her country to come here to Taiwan because they're seeing the possibilities in Taiwan. The semiconductor industry, of course, is one of them. But they're also seeing the growing interest in Taiwan in Europe. So it's a mutually beneficial situation, and there's a lot of common goals and maybe even common values between the two areas.
I could only give my total affirmation for this, because this is
so
exactly
she wasn't
what
lying
it is.
to me. Okay, good.
No, and of course, I don't have so many colleagues, so I can guess who it was, and I'm totally in sync with her on this one. We see it with politicians coming from parliaments, even sometimes from regional parliaments. I come from a part in southern Germany, Bavaria, that many listeners will know, and we had even a delegation from the Bavarian parliament here. They loved it, it was an experience for them. I have also over the past few years, I have business representatives that have never been to Taiwan before, and they say, wow, we have not even thought about all these opportunities. And I think it's really mutual. It's not about Europeans wanting to get a piece of the cake of the semiconductor industry, but this is also in mutual interest. Look at some of these latest investments. Now we are back to economy, but it's a good illustration. So TSMC has invested maybe not as much as in the United States, but kind of a massive investment in Germany already some time ago. This has created so much understanding for Taiwan, for semiconductor industry, and it has a knock-on effects also, because now that this factory is being built in Dresden in southern Germany, there will be also, especially in the beginning, there will be a lot of Taiwanese specialists and experts will be traveling there. They will bring their families. So the region in Germany that is dealing with this, Saxony, is now developing programs also for graduates, to get a better understanding of electrical engineering, because also the skills need to be developed. So this is really the spirit, to work on all levels. And I'm also in my job, I'm really pushing very much not to get stuck on only judging relations between how many agreements we have signed, because that will be difficult for all sorts of reasons, but how much we have actually done on the ground. And I still have more than 2 years ahead of me, and I want to be judged on that ground, how much we have achieved in this field.
Well, speaking of 2 years, so you've been in Taiwan almost 2 years now, and I think maybe we should conclude our conversation by not forgetting you. You are the star of this conversation today. So maybe tell us a little bit about you and Mr. Lutz Guellner. I don't know how well I have that from the German perspective.
Very good.
And maybe tell us a little bit about your journey here to Taiwan, and also over these last almost 2 years, what have been your experiences in Taiwan? Maybe has there been like one place which has really impressed you or you can't forget, or maybe one food item? Because, we can't talk about Taiwan and not talk about food.
Absolutely.
Maybe one food item that knocked your socks off while you've been here.
I love this, because whenever you watch Taiwanese movies, and they're fantastic, there's so many great smaller independent movies, etc. There's always an element of food in there, either in a reconciliation at the end, between the families that had a kind of a fight or something. And it's really, it's a feature. It's a feature. It's We have it a bit in France, this type of thing.
I would say many of your member states have very good food cultures too.
Absolutely. I come from a place where food is maybe not the best of the best, but I would always defend Bavarian.
That gives you more room for improvement.
No, but my journey, I think what is really important to know for the listeners is that I wanted to come to Taiwan. I was not sent here. It was the destination that I put clearly as number one for the posting. I had the pleasure of being here already before my posting a couple of times on business trips with my previous job, also, of course, in the European institutions. I was dealing with an issue related to disinformation and how this can be weaponized, etc. So very telling, of course, also for here. And that's why I really wanted to come here. And every day I wake up in the morning, I say that was the right choice. It was really the right thing to do, because from the very first day, I felt welcome, integrated. And even with my linguistic difficulties and maybe there's a lot of room still to develop, but I always felt really very, very, very much accepted. There's a little anecdote of my very first week here, which I tried to condense. I after a couple of days, I wanted just to explore a bit the neighborhood, and I live up in Yangmingshan, I think very close to where the ICRT studios were a long time ago, but nevertheless, so very close to where you guys used to be, and went for a jogging, but had lost my way, and on the way back, or I thought it was the way back, is the small road that connects Yangmingshan to Beito. And I turned around the corner, and it was full of monkeys, of the macaques, And as a European, of course, I don't know what to do with these monkeys. Are they dangerous? Are they not dangerous?
It
was
a tricky
big group.
situation.
It was a big group, so I didn't dare to run on, and I couldn't run back. So
you're trespassing.
I was really I was a bit desperate what to do, and exactly at that moment came this little blue car with this elderly lady who spoke a little bit of English, and she looked at me. I was in my jogging gear, and she looked at me. Do you need help? And I said, yeah, I lost my way. Of course, I didn't dare to say that I was afraid of the monkeys. And she said, come in, I drive you home. This is the spirit.
That was very nice of her.
This is the spirit of Taiwan. And now coming to the grand finale, and that is the food that I like.
That's what we've been waiting for.
Of course, I like everything. I have to admit, I even did a cooking course here.
Really?
Because I love it so much. Of course,
wow.
All the grand classics, from xiaolongbaos to new romian, these are, of course, I learned a little bit. My secret, well, it's not so secret, but my real all-time favorite is sanbeiji. I will always love this. But I'm also one of the foreigners, if I can call it like this, that go to the night market and do not turn their heads away when they pass by at the stand with a Joe Tofu. Okay. I like it. Maybe not every day, I have to admit. But
you're a braver man than I am sometimes.
It's good enough. But I find it's exactly that. And let's not forget one thing that I love about Taiwan is, of course, the mountains, the hiking, the countryside. I live up in Yangmingshan. I think I go every weekend to the Jixing up. It's not very far. It's not very challenging. My wife is a bit desperate, because she says, oh, not again in the mountains. But I really love it. And the project is, of course, now Yushan very soon.
Wow, that will be amazing. You have to tell me about that.
I will. We can do the next show about it.
Okay, that's. I'm going to hold you to that promise. And I'm just a little bit curious. So you mentioned you took the course on Taiwanese cooking, and I'm curious, how did your family respond? Did they say, "Yeah, Dad, you did a great job," or is it like, we'll try the restaurant again next week?
I think, well, now it's a very dangerous thing. If you think about yourself as a good cook, but I leave that to others. I have to admit, even for some of our VIP guests, sometimes I cook myself.
Really?
Because I think it's important to also give a bit of a personal note.
Right.
And I like cooking. Cooking is something which relaxes me, which
very therapeutic.
And it's a very creative element. Because very seldom that you have all the ingredients ingredients at home and you always need to improvise. I think it's a great way of moving ahead. But to answer your question, I did not hear any complaints so far. But the good thing for my family is, of course, that I'm out very, very often, so they are not suffering too much from my cooking if they dislike it.
Well, tell you what, every day at noontime, some of the colleagues here, they like to do a little bit of cooking here in the office too. So maybe next time we'll have you come at noontime and you can share some of your culinary tricks with us.
But maybe not the Taiwanese one, but then I bring the European side, okay?
And they would probably love that even more because they love every type of food here.
But, now we get into a full kind of food conversation. The braised pork, for example, is something which is so close to my heart because we have the signature dish of Bavaria is, of course, it's not the pork knuckle, as people think, but it's actually the braised pork, the roast pork, which is very, very close to it. So there are so many overlaps in it. Maybe I'm constructing them, but I like them in any case. So challenge accepted, and I come over for a cooking challenge. Why don't we do that?
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you accepted our challenge, but don't worry, we probably won't force you to do that because I know you're a busy man. But thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for telling us more about the European Economic and Trade Office here in Taiwan. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And thank you for just letting us know more about Europe Day and everything that your office is doing to improve Taiwan and European relations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be at ICRT.
That was Lutz Guellner, head of the European Economic and Trade Office in Taiwan. To listen to more great conversations, check out your favorite podcast platform to listen to more Taiwan Talk episodes and other interesting ICRT podcasts. While you're there, please leave a comment or rating to let us know what you think and so more people can discover ICRT's great podcasts. For Taiwan Talk, I'm Tim Berge.